So welcome to September's student chapter meeting for the Penn State IAEM student chapter. We are still working on our October program, but if you stay tuned for November, November's meeting will happen at the same time as the IAEM conference this year, which I will be attending. So providing everything goes well, I will log in that evening and kind of give a state of the conference that night. That will close us out for the year, as we won't have a meeting for December, and we will pick it up again in January. So stay tuned for that. Tonight, we are joined by Scott Mickalonis. He's an experienced emergency manager, administrator, educator, and field practitioner in all aspects of public safety field, in the public safety field, including preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery, as well as the financial management and regulatory requirements. Scott also holds a current CEM for us at the IAEM. So we look forward to talking with Scott tonight. So welcome, and Scott, give us a brief rundown on who you are and where you got to.
Sure, thanks. I'm gonna just share the screen just so it keeps me on track.
Let me make sure honest. That is yep, there it is. And yes, you should be able to now.
Okay. Let's do that. You don't want to see my calendar.
Wow, you're almost busier than I am.
All right, how does that look?
Great.
Okay, so this is just so that I don't get off track. So don't look too much into it. But I call it a basic dive because I'm a pretty simple person. I'm an operator, you know, I actually want to learn from you all tonight a little bit. You know, taking the deeper approach and the more complex approach into what this profession's all about and where we're headed. So thanks for having me here. I'll give you a little history about where I am from. So I started in emergency management back in the early 2000s as a first responder. Well, I was doing first responder work well prior to that, but I got affiliated after graduating from Penn State with a public safety department in southeastern Pennsylvania, where I really had an opportunity to grow professionally and jump into various aspects of our job and what it was and what it's now become to be. We this particular county was a population of 800,000. So there was, when you look at risk and the potential for things to occur, there was a lot of it present. So we did a lot of planning for mass casualties and large event response, hazardous material situations. We flooded 3 or 4 times a year. So there was really the opportunity to learn from a number of individuals who have been around since the civil defense era, and to just learn from them and grow from them and take it all in. And that's what I did. I was a sponge for wanting to know how the system worked, how the politics played out. And really on the government side, there's a lot of that. So I spent a number of years just learning from the people who had been doing it for quite some time. And then 9/11 happened. And that in an instant changed our scope, changed our the way we do business. And from then on out, really gave me an opportunity to delve deeper into the profession of emergency management and look at things from a number of ways. And I was given an opportunity. I had a chance to develop the mass casualty plan for the EMS community in that area. And an individual who ultimately became my boss happened to be sitting in the presentation when I did it before he was my boss. And he was happy with what he saw and ultimately gave me a chance to grow into the field of emergency management. And then I backed my education up into what I was doing. So it started out very simple, operationally focused, working on developing special operations components for hazardous materials, specialty rescue, things that don't necessarily happen every day in our world. Ensuring plans were tested and validated, and then had an opportunity to come and lead the entire department, which was what a fantastic opportunity it was. At the same time, I was growing a family, as well as going to school to obtain my master's degree in emergency management, which really gave me the ability to learn about the other things, the social aspects, the gender and equality issues that were really just becoming big components of emergency management at that time. And from there was able to grow a program in that public safety department. And I wasn't satisfied, if you will. I wanted to do more. And quite honestly, I was, call it lucky, call it divine intervention, I don't know, but I started to look at where I thought the next big need for emergency managers was going to be. Like I'm sure many of you are thinking today, what's next? Where are we going? And I noticed that healthcare, was changing. The requirements for healthcare facilities was changing. The standards that they needed to follow were becoming more formalized relative to emergency preparedness, and took an opportunity to come out to Central Pennsylvania and join the Hershey Medical Center as the emergency manager there. As soon as I joined, Ebola hit, and spent a good majority of my time developing strategies for highly infectious disease, and ultimately helped Hershey become one of the 9 Ebola treatment centers in Pennsylvania, becoming the second certified center in Pennsylvania back in 2015. Continuing to want to do more, I ultimately left there in 2017 and joined the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania as a manager in their preparedness program, which at the time was contracted to the Pennsylvania Department of Health to develop healthcare coalitions, which was Health and Human Services program for bringing healthcare facilities together to prepare together to coordinate, collaborate, and develop their plans as a group. So did that all the way through up until COVID. So it seems like bad things follow me as time goes on. So COVID hit. The program changed dramatically after that, and at the same time, Penn State Health had grown as a health system, and I had the chance to come back and join Penn State again, which is certainly not an opportunity everybody gets in their career, but to come back and look at the growth that was taking place in that particular organization and begin to build on the efforts that have been started to grow a very infant health system. So that's kind of things in a nutshell, for me. And, I talked briefly about the pre 9/11, post 9/11 aspect of things. I would say 9/11 was the turning point for my career. I in a way, I hold a little bit of guilt for that because, a lot of people in our world Didn't come home that day for a number of reasons, but it really gave me, it propelled my career because I did a few simple things, aligned myself with people who were in it for the right reasons, people who gave me a chance, and at the same time had an opportunity to leverage the things that came out of 9/11, like grants, plans, relationship building opportunities to build a program. And that's, I feel helped to do that. Again, not many people get that opportunity, but really pre 9/11, we were kind of just there. There was civil defense era plans. We had been through the Cold War. The 90s, there really wasn't a whole lot that went on, the first World Trade Center, but it didn't do anything to excel planning like 9/11 did, planning and preparedness. And 9/11 really changed it. The Presidential Preparedness Directive came out. We started talking about vulnerabilities, threats, and other issues. There was, the climate change issue really came to being. And we started looking at this from a holistic perspective of natural, technological, and man-made threats. Katrina in 2005 is what solidified my feeling that healthcare was going to be the next big thing. And typically it takes about 5 years or 6 years for the after effects of or the improvement planning that comes out of a response of that magnitude to make its way into legislation, standards, and rules. And it was about 2010, 2011 when the Katrina era laws and rules for healthcare went into effect. So a couple of years after that is when I made that move, and couldn't be happier in healthcare, working as a part of the Penn State team. So here we are today. I mentioned Katrina. Right on the heels of Katrina was Rita, and our first real test of changes that were made, particularly with facilities in Louisiana, was Gustav. And I had the distinct opportunity to lead an EMS team from Pennsylvania down to Louisiana to support healthcare response there. And that was eye-opening. I would say some things went well and some things didn't. But we learned a lot about evacuation, shelter in place, sustaining healthcare facilities through major events, as a part of that. At the same time, we still had those legacy threats that came out of 9/11, the chem bio issues. If you remember, after 9/11, we did nothing but respond to anthrax scares for a good long time. There was certainly a healthcare impact to that as it relates to decontamination and monitoring. So we have now a need that has sustained through all of the other threats that have occurred to ensure that we have PPE and monitoring equipment and capabilities that will allow us to keep our facilities safe and clean. And then, of course, the more present issues that we've been dealing with, COVID over the last 3 years, monkeypox most recently, and an active assailant, active shooter type situations, workplace violence. And I really grouped that all together, but there are so many things that could potentially affect healthcare workers, from patient interactions to situations where someone enters a facility and begins an attack. So we have to look at a lot of this, and that's really more prevalent than any other threat or vulnerability that we have today. And then the most recent things like ransomware and cybersecurity related issues, we get our hands in every little detail of preparedness. And I think that's what the interesting part of it is, but it keeps us going every day. I did mention, a little bit about the regulatory side of it with healthcare. We tend to run about 5 years behind the last major event. So, we will see COVID era changes to regulatory requirements in healthcare in the next couple of years. And most recently, just as July 1st, our entire emergency management chapter in our Joint Commission accreditation was rewritten. So we had to go back and essentially redevelop all of our plans, our hazard vulnerability assessments, our communication strategies. They've added a component into there about continuity of operations now, as probably the first post-COVID era requirement. How do we sustain the business of healthcare through an event that either takes out our workforce or supply chain and requires us to manage the event? With that comes competing priorities, and that we are the collaborators and coordinators. And if you give me or tell me one organization that doesn't have, or that has more than one emergency manager in their healthcare facility, I'd be very surprised. So we're a single entity typically. We force multiply by forming systems, and that's how we work together. But most typically what you'll see is a single emergency manager supporting a single facility, or a single emergency manager supporting multiple facilities, which makes it even harder. Now I have both in Penn State Health, and we do the best we can with that, but it really requires you to engage leadership, engage clinicians, staff, and everybody has a role in the effort that we play for preparedness, response, and recovery. And our job is to bring those folks together and have them collaborating. So you talk about partnerships, it's not just external. We do a lot of engagement with our community responders. In fact, the reason why I'm still at work right now is we had our first responder agencies here in Lancaster at our new hospital taking a tour tonight, but had an opportunity to meet with our local government folks today, and we do this every day as part of our job is maintaining and sustaining those relationships both internally and externally. So I'll stop there. I kind of gave you the past and present, and before I go into the future, maybe you want to shoot some questions or have a little bit of discussion.
Sure. So your responses with Ebola and anthrax, did that help prepare you for COVID at all?
It's interesting. Ebola definitely was. We took the best parts of Ebola from a personal protective aspect, training, education, and we're able to cross some of that into COVID. So, I think we were fortunate. I think what we didn't have with that was just the very nature, the difference in the way transmission worked. So Ebola was highly transmissible, and to an extent COVID was too, but they transmit differently. So we wore PAPRs with Ebola. We wore N95 masks in COVID. So there was some differences in the structure of PPE that we used, but we all built upon that. And then, if you want to take that back to anthrax, anthrax is a chemical, a biological that we handled as a hazardous material. And so we learned from that too. We learned the personal protective nature of how to handle that and test for that. And I think every aspect of the public health spectrum, we learn from and we try and better from. And really, COVID was moving so fast. I think what really caused healthcare concern was that the changes in the recommendations, the changes in the requirements were so quickly evolving, it was hard to keep up with the education.
Mm-hmm. Where did you get your master's degree?
So I did my master's through Millersville University. They have the Center for Disaster Research and Education right down here in Lancaster. And I was able to do that education online while I was working full time, and came out here to Millersville to for on a few occasions to engage the faculty and staff there. But I was really fortunate, lucky to be a part of that program.
So how did you find the formal training, formal schooling versus the on the job experience and training?
Yeah, and, that's a good question. I think there's a couple different answers. And I'll say this based on more of a time perspective. The individuals who were who became your first real emergency managers were operators, fire chiefs, firefighters, police officers, and emergency medical personnel who learned from the street. They learned firsthand experience. They learned through the civil defense era, and those who were successful were ones that were able to adapt a very rigid operational capability into something that has become much more flexible, much more fluid. The profession has evolved, and I think the formal education that I had really focused on the social side of things, the sociological ends, the psychological developments, things that really took me out of my comfort zone. I volunteered as a fireman. I was really hands-on. I preferred that. I liked that. That was my comfort area. My education, my formal education in my master's really got me thinking about the holistic approach. How do people react in situations? Why do they react the way they do? And really a lot of the components of our education focused on Katrina and why some people stayed and some people left, why women were particularly vulnerable in certain disaster situations as opposed to males and children, and why the differences created additional vulnerabilities, and then how we can plan for and react to situations that allow us, or plan for and allow us to react in a better and more appropriate manner to save more lives, protect more property, and reduce damage to the community. So I was very concerned it had taken me out of my comfort zone. I think I said that, but ultimately that I feel like that has made me more well-rounded as an emergency manager, and probably is where I found my passion for the healthcare emergency management space, because that is truly a more complex, more well-rounded profession within our community. So that's why I had leaned that direction after I went to school.
I don't want to dominate all the questions. And anyone else have questions they would like to ask?
I could talk a little bit about how I got into IAEM then too.
We'll get to, because we want to know about your CEM process too, but so some of this is very interesting. Coming from dealing with anthrax and the 9/11 events and very, very physical things, how are you coping in your process with cyber attacks now and ransomware, and how's that working out for you?
Yeah, it's another good question. That is a continually evolving threat. Every single day, we come in, we'll get a situational awareness briefing on the next issue, and what we're looking at is how to respond to that. Not necessarily respond to the threat, but respond to the after effects of what happens if something gets through. Now, in our organization, we have an entire team that's looking at the threats themselves. But looking at the fallout if something gets through, or how we could sustain the business function of the organization through an attack that takes our systems and renders them inoperable for a period of time. So that's really our focus. And while during anthrax, I was the mitigator, the tester, and let's prove this false. Or if proven positive, how do we get this cleaned up and get the organization back in business? Now this is more, what can we put in place to ensure that we can sustain and recover appropriately through long term. So we've done a lot of work around developing strategies with our clinical care units to understand what the potential after effect is going to be, what they may need to do for long periods of time, how long they can actually go with being off the grid, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I learned something very interesting, that many physicians that we are putting through medical school today have never charted on paper. And that may be the only way we can sustain the function of the organization for a period of time. And then, looking at how we can prioritize restoration, or work with our, information services teams to help prioritize applications, within the organization to ensure that the most significant and most patient care focused and most critical applications are the ones that get restored in a timely manner. That we just can't pick one and do it. It has to be organized and prioritized and ensures life safety within the number one priority.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned early on the politics, and one of the things I've really come to recognize about emergency management is that it's 90% relationship building. Mm-hmm. So how do you navigate the politics of it all? And I'm not talking the bonfire that's national politics right now. I'm talking about agency politics, personal politics, that kind of stuff. How do you find that that's a huge deal in your life, or is it just a natural thing you figured out?
Yeah, interestingly, as I've progressed up the organization, the opinion has, my opinion on this has altered, and what I need to do to keep our program functioning has changed as well. So as the hands-on operator, individual who's needs to respond person, my belief is that politics should not and do not play a role in emergency management. And I'll do everything in my power to keep that outside of the emergency operations center, the incident command center that we have in place. Now, as I've progressed through the organization and worked myself into a leadership role, there's different aspects of politics that play, and that's really being the mediator, the collaborator, listening to leaders and understanding their needs, their desires, and what they may be seeing from their point of view that may be different from what we're doing. But it really does change, and I really don't have a place for it in the program, but I do my best to ensure that we're meeting the expectations of our leaders, and that's a big effort. So yes, relationships play a role in this every single day, and working through those efforts within the organization, within the healthcare organization. It's really working with leaders and working with individuals to ensure that everybody's on the same page. In my government role, it was keeping the elected officials happy and ensuring that we were present, we responded appropriately, and that every resource that we brought to bear was utilized to help control the situation. So there was a number of events that we had that put us into the forefront of a response, and we had to respond the right way the first time, and there was no other option. So it was consistent, constant readiness, and the ability to respond, and that kept us out of the political issues.
Well, before we get on to your IAEM, anyone else have any questions about Scott's history and experience?
Hey Scott, I'll ask one that I kind of use as a common one. But if you had one piece of advice that you either wish that you had when you were in grad school, or that you think would be important for the students now to know, what's like your elevator pitch best advice?
I don't know that it's advice, but I will tell you one thing that I've missed throughout my entire formal and informal education, and that is how to be a true leader. I know you were saying earlier you're going through a program now, and I think that's something in emergency management we don't formally train people on in any of our programs. It's leadership and influence, and so my advice is take every opportunity to learn that. Some of it is natural, no doubt. There are just people who naturally lead and naturally move to the front, or move to the support end of that role. But there's no one, or nobody that has formally taught that, and I wish I would have had that. So my advice is to get that education.
Is there any place that you've seen that offers it, like any, not that I'm asking for like a recommendation from well, I guess I kind of am, but is there any place that you would feel comfortable like pointing? I know that there are a lot of like certifications and classes and everything. So if you had to point students in the right place, maybe not like a specific place, but maybe like a type of leadership class, or
Yeah. So I think there's a few. EMI in FEMA's EMI program, I think there's probably courses. In fact, I know there's courses that could help in that effort. At one point, I know you said you've been engaged with the Coast Guard and their programs. At one point, the Coast Guard, through the relationships that they've built, at the county level, they offered opportunities to engage in those classes collaboratively. And I think, maybe that's an opportunity there that could be leveraged. There are programs, Naval Postgraduate School, I think is a good, hard to get into, difficult to be engaged in, but I think that's probably a program that can help to grow the next generation of leaders.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. So how did the IAEM come into your life, and has it helped you? And how was your CEM process? How long did it take you? And has that helped you?
Yeah, yes, and yes. I joined IAEM 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, as a student member when I was going through my master's program, and was given an opportunity through my employer to start to work on my portfolio, which was the contributions to the profession and the education that you need to become a CEM.
Did you start with the AEM?
No, that wasn't an opportunity for me.
Huh?
So I'm just completing my 10th year as a CEM. So I think the AEM was brand new when I went for my CEM. So we hosted an exam at our organization. We had 30 individuals from across the Northeast come in and take the test with us that day, and from there we built our portfolios, and there was a few of us that worked on it together, but we were given opportunities. When you talk about the contributions to the profession, there are so many different things that you can do to engage those contributions: membership, speaking engagements, writing elected officials, obtaining awards and recognitions, that, there's really opportunities out there. So I would say take every opportunity you can to talk, to encourage professional development, and engage in the effort. So had an opportunity to attend a number of the IAEM conferences, meet collaboratively with peers from across the country, learn a little bit. I don't know that I've leveraged things like the job board or other components of the organization, but I have been an active participant in the healthcare caucus over the years, not recently, but I've taken advantage of some of the resources and opportunities that the organization has available to them. So just 2 weeks ago, submitted my second recertification packet, which will hopefully take me out to 15 years. And I will tell you, if you've looked at how the program works, your educational requirements decrease while your contributions increase. And I think that's a really interesting component to the CEM certification, that they want you to engage peers. They want you to show what you've been doing. They want you to be members and engage professionals across the spectrum. So I think that's an important component. I think there's only so many classes that come out and so many things that you can do, and it's really important to give back at some point in your career. And that's, I hate to be the old guy, but I feel like that's where I am right now. But I'm excited to hopefully by the end of the year hear something back from the association.
Outstanding.
I just posted a couple of things in the chat. I know JD was talking about the conference. The first one is if you want to go to the conference but don't want to pay the full registration fee, they have a program where you can work for your registration fee. That might also be interesting. I don't know what exactly they have you doing, but that might be a good way to talk to people that you wouldn't otherwise talk to. I did that when I was in grad school for a conference I wanted to go to up at MIT, and it ended up working out really well. The second one, speaking of talking to people, is an IAEM ambassador program, and that is they've got IAEM members serving as ambassadors to help tailor your conference experience. And you can do that if you like networking and meeting new people, if you're a member in good standing, and if you've ever been to a conference before, which JD, I know you have. But again, when I saw that, I thought it was interesting because it would be an interesting way to talk to people that you might not talk to otherwise.
That's interesting. I might have to sign up for that. All right, I will research that later. So can you give a concrete example of where the CEM has helped you?
Well, I would say, I know for a fact it got me my position at Hershey Medical Center back in 2014. I was told that was one of the things that they were looking for. So post acceptance of the job, I said, I think I asked that question one time in conversation, like, what was it that set me apart from the other candidates who I, obviously didn't know who they were, but and it came down to the fact that I had this certification, and what it was, you know, they knew that I had established the standards. I understood the roles, the basic roles and responsibilities. I could organize, you know, because we had to put the portfolios together and the package. So I could organize myself to the point where it helped. It helped them to be able to say, yes, he could probably do this. If he was able to make it through that process, he's gonna be able to do it. You know, work as an emergency manager here at Penn State Health. So that's the best concrete example I can give you. You know, I think it's something. It's more and more individuals are obtaining that certification now. And more individuals are sustaining their certification now more than ever. But it's something that sets you apart from other people. And I don't mean that in a pompous way. It shows that you took the effort to learn and to grow professionally and to engage with others in the profession. And you know, I strongly encourage certification and education as a part of your professional development.
Outside of the CEM, are there any other certifications or specific education outside of our public health programs here at Penn State? Are there anything else specific that you would recommend pointing students to?
Yeah, so I recently, you know, again, never stop learning, recently obtained my certification as a business continuity professional. Probably one of the most difficult exams and portfolios I put together in my professional career as well. And I think what's happening, you know, in the profession now is the tie-in between emergency management and business continuity. That one, they are not, they need to go together. You respond and you recover long-term and you recover short-term. So in order to be a good emergency manager, you also have to know how to be able to sustain, you know, over the long term. And that has really helped me to grow in the other aspects of programmatic development that I have responsibility for, but also as a professional. And I think having those two credentials hand in hand, you know, are really, I think really are an important part of my life, and appreciate having the opportunity to have both of them, but sustaining them, you know, too, will be an interesting task, as both require continuing education to ensure that you maintain the certification.
I have JD. I don't want to cut you off. Did you have more?
Nope. No.
Okay. We've gone through, like, we've talked. Bless you. We've talked to the students about the IAEM like the binder. But as far as the test goes, is there anything special that you recommend as far as studying, or any specific study guides that you would say really, you know, I don't know if there are any classes that you would point to, or?
Yeah, I would say know in detail the 4 phases of EM, and know, you know, kind of what each one does differently, and which, you know, what detail they each kind of put together. You know, it's been so long since I took the test that I can't speak specifically to what I remember, but I know that a huge component was the 4 phases of emergency management, and the operations planning, operations preparedness, response and recovery really were the key components of that exam.
How ICS heavy is it?
Oh, I want to say there were definitely components to that, to ICS in there. I don't remember how heavy it was, but
Okay.
I'm sure there were definitely components to it.
I've had people tell me to like retake 100, 200, 300, 400 if you could, 700, 800 as part of the studying process. So
Yeah, and there are study guides out there, and there are classes that you can take, I believe, to prep for it as well. But I wouldn't stress if you've done those classes and you have a pretty good baseline, the exam should be pretty straightforward for you.
All right. Do you want to tell us about what your thoughts of the future are?
Sure can. What keeps me up at night? Everything. Everything. I don't sleep well at all. I would say on any given day, at any given time, we just, in particular in healthcare, we just don't know what the next threat is coming down the road. So there's it's the ability to kind of predict, to understand the threats, to work with others to ensure that they feel ready for the inevitable or for the unknown. So I would say, excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, you didn't want to see me sneeze, so I went off camera. That's the beauty of Zoom. But I think just being ready, there's new and evolving threats all the time, and teaching the baseline, teaching the understanding of who to call, when to activate, how to respond, how to protect yourself, how to protect the organization, how to protect others. Teaching the basics, over and over and over again, repetitive efforts to ensure that we have readiness across the organization. So that's what keeps me up at night. Where do I think we're going as a profession? And really, the possibilities are endless. I hate to admit that. I may be, I'm becoming one of the ones that's not up to the most recent newfound processes, but data and data-driven approaches. How do we leverage information from across our organizations to make informed decisions, leverage technology when it works and when it's capable, building those relationships. That's one thing that's going to sustain through forever. There's never going to be a time where we won't be in relationship building. The importance of research and education. I can't say that enough. Making sure that we continue to build our workforce, support the educational development in government-based emergency management, public health preparedness, healthcare continuity, regardless of what it is. We all need to be speaking the same language. So continue to learn from and develop the next generation of individuals. Certification, and we talked in depth about that, and the fact that with inflation and budgets and needs across organizations, being able to understand that this will be a multifaceted approach, and groups that have multiple responsibilities. So continuity, security, public health, emergency management, all doing multiple jobs across the spectrum. Because we are a non-revenue generating in many aspects of our roles. So until we can get expenses and revenue under control, we're not going to see programmatic growth until the next problem comes along. So I think we've developed our post-COVID profession at this point, you know, where we're continuing to develop that. And, you know, whatever the next issue coming down the road is going to adapt that moving forward. You know, I think my piece of advice, embrace the past, but forge the future. The best thing I ever did was listen to those that came before me, and not for the stories, but just to understand the politics, to understand the, you know, why they did what they did, and why programs were the way that they were. And that helps us grow as a profession. It helps us keep the history alive. And I don't know what my advice for the like-minded individual was, but, you know, I think, you know, we're all in this together, and, you know, however we can continue to work as peers, us working, you know, with you, you know, ensuring that we take the capabilities that are growing out of post-secondary programs now and graduate programs, and how we can leverage them to ensure that we're a better prepared organization and really develop that next phase of workforce as time goes on. So I think actually, JD, that might have been a kind of an answer to a question that you had asked, like when we were exchanging emails, like what's the advice for someone who's starting out in their career and somebody who's maybe using this as a secondary, you know, career. And I think it's the same. You know, be dedicated to the job, whatever that is. Continue to foster relationships, understand risk, threats, and vulnerabilities. Learn from everybody. Be a sponge. Anything you can possibly get your hands on. And grow. And I think that's really, you know, opportunities that you know, that we can take while in the career or just entering in the career. We need to yearn for education constantly. So with that, I will share my contact information with you all. That is my cell phone. I answer it 24 hours a day. I'd like to sleep at night, but I do.
Well, now that we're going to start calling you at midnight, you probably won't.
Well, I'm always happy to talk and answer questions and learn from you all too. I think at some point I hope that it's the other way around, that we can bring I can bring my team to a meeting and you all can teach our team something that we didn't know. So,
are there any other questions for Scott tonight? Well, Scott, thank you so much for taking your time. You're out of your busy schedule, as we saw, to come and talk to us. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I hope to be engaged in the organization moving forward.
Oh, we'll be in touch. Rest assured.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, everybody, have a very good night, and see y'all next month. Stay tuned for the announcements.
Sounds good.
And what's the date again, JD?
For the next one, that's a very good question. Let me pull my Zoom back up.
I won't even try it because I always get it wrong.
October the 18th. So,
and if you're really bored between now and then and you want to come to a public health preparedness webinar on October 5th, you can do that too.
Outstanding. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I just saw your message.
Got it.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.